Um, Hello. So I'm here to talk about an event that we ran at the Charles Hayden Planetarium where we took a live action, live interactive text-based game, sort of like the ones that you might have played on your computer if you were, hanging out on computers in the 70s and 80s. And what we did is we took one called Space Station, which is a fairly new one actually, because these things have kind of made a comeback. And we created, so the game is you wake up on an abandoned space station, which is malfunctioning and being attacked by an alien warship, and you have to figure out how to fix it and what you're supposed to do to actually win the game. So what happens when you run these at conventions, which is what the game's creator usually does, is you have several hundred people playing the game, passing the mic around, and whoever has the mic gets to give a command. And so all we did is we sort of, tends to be a 100% non-visual experience. It's all in your head. So what we did is we created the rooms of the space station. And we ran the event in our planetarium with Jared, the game creator, as our game master, actually facilitating the play. And I'm going to tell you kind of all about how we did that. So we created the rooms using a software you probably are familiar with if you do animation stuff. We used Maya to take these very bare descriptions of the rooms that are in the game text and actually create the environments of the space station. So for example, one I'm going to show you first is the sensor array. The description is, you're in a narrow corridor filled with communications equipment. Cables and wires are running from a sparking access panel down to the CPU core below decks. Exits are starboard. So that's what we had to work with. And if we move to the next visual, you can see the room that we actually created. You can go ahead and take the lights off of me. So here is the sensor array. And there's about, there's like 12 rooms on the space station. So, and several of them we needed to create multiple versions of them because, for instance, if we move to the next room, which is the cybernetics lab of the space station, it's got a couple of things going on. So here's the room as its default. You'll notice over here we have a little robot. This is Froz. And behind you on the table, there is a toolkit. Now, as part of the gameplay, you can pick these up and carry them with you. So we actually had to create multiple versions of the room, one where they're there and one where they're not. And also one where Froz is there but the tools aren't, and one where the tools are there but Froz is not. And sometimes you can change the environment of the room itself. So if we go to the CPU core, one of the tasks you have to do is clean these filthy looking veins, which will start the computers running. Right now they're running hot, so if you can clean the veins, that is one of the tasks you have to do. So we created multiple rooms for several of these rooms. And to sort of help keep the game players oriented, if we move to the command deck, I'm going to show you the example of how we colored the entrances and exits. So over here you'll see, you may have noticed in some of the rooms, some of the doors have blue outlines. Those are exits to other rooms on this level. And several of them have this red room that you can see behind me. That's the turbo lift that goes up and down. So to help orient the players on the space station. So I'm just going to have, as I go on to describe the event itself, I'm going to move us to my favorite room in the space station, the observation deck. On one side you can see the Death World, and on the other side you can see the Frelian warship, which is trying to destroy your space station. And so what we did when we ran the event, we have a 209-seat planetarium, and we sold out. Partially as a result of timing, we actually ran it right at the beginning of PAX East, the night before PAX East, which is a gaming convention, opened. But because it was the night before the convention started, a lot of the people who showed up were not PAXers. They were actually locals. And we had a very wide range. We had, people who looked like they had probably been playing these sorts of games when they originally came out. They probably played the original Zork. And we also had really, really tiny children who had probably never heard of Zork. So we did it the same way you would do it at a convention. We ran the mic around the room. We had a staff member following the mic. It took about an hour for the mic to go around the whole planetarium once, with everybody giving a command. And we wound up playing for 2.5 hours. So everybody got to give at least 2 commands. And it was only supposed to be 2 hours, but after 2 hours, they were they hadn't actually solved the game yet. They had died several times, but they hadn't actually solved the game. So Jared went ahead and ran it until they won. And one of the things we figured out is, if you do run an event like this, you may want to impose an age limit. Like the kids, the tiny kids, didn't really understand what was going on. And when it came their turn to give commands, they often gave commands that made no sense. So, these commands I'm talking about, like you say, go up a level or inspect that display. And they often made ones that didn't really make sense, or they just repeated what the person before them had done, because it's probably a game they've never played before. And it's a very slow pace, because you're moving around the room, everybody giving different commands. So I do think maybe if we did this in the future, we would pose an age limit, maybe like middle school aged. And especially since this is a very complicated game. Space Station has a very long list of tasks that you need to carry out, and some of them have to be carried out in a very specific order. So you're gonna die a lot. So, however, the people at first the audience was really quiet and they just let the person giving the command talk, but by the end of it, they were all screaming out suggestions for whoever was giving the command as they got more and more into it and they realized that they might actually win. So it became much more full audience participation towards the end. And all told, it seemed to go over very well. People, other than some frustration with the kids not quite being able to get it, people seemed to really enjoy it. Jared sold several versions of the game after it was done. And Jared himself loved doing this. So he is looking to do it more in the future. He is actually working with Sudecum to repeat this event. And we now do have a contract with Jared where he can take all our visuals and run these games. And it's highly scalable to domes of different size. We included a little palette of sound effects to go with it, but they certainly weren't necessary, or you could add your own sound effects. So this is something that could be easily translatable to many different domes, and I think Jared is certainly ready, willing, and able to do this in other dome scenarios. So basically it was something that I don't think anybody has ever done in a dome before. And we might look into, because it went over so well, we were sort of thinking we might try our hand at creating our own game. Maybe one that takes a little more advantage of a digital planetarium system's ability to adapt on the fly and move through space, and doesn't just use still images. But I mean, for a first step, this is great. And this is also, like I said, very easy to translate from one dome to the other because they are still images. There are a lot of them, but they are just still full dome images. So I'm gonna move to my last slide, which has Jared's information on it. It has our information on it. And I believe Jared is getting ready to create a new page on his website regarding this. So Memento Mori is his gaming company. There's a sub-part of it called Parsley, which includes the game Space Station. And I believe he is getting ready to add a page, which is mementomori.com/fulldome for people who might be interested in that. I do have copies of his card. Also, if you guys have any ideas about, if we were going to create a game of our own using full dome digital capabilities, I'd love to hear about that. So my email's up there, or you can find me around here. And if you'd like to have Jared's card, I have several of those. If you have, I'm a few seconds early, but if you have any questions about this, I would love to take them.
So, obviously you guys have to decide what was the main barrier to just plot on the model and decide moving through real time?
Sorry?
So you guys have Digital Sky, what was the main barrier to just putting the model in Digital Sky and moving through it in real time? Or was it just a bad cost benefit?
Repeat the question.
Yeah. So what was the barrier to putting it in digital sky and moving through it in real time? I mean, we were moving through it in real time, essentially. They said, you know, go up a level, we went up a level, and the room changed.
But you did a slide transition as opposed to moving through the model itself.
Well, you didn't have we didn't have an actual model of the space station.
Oh, okay. So you did
We had full dome images for each of the rooms of the space station.
But I mean, you built a model in Maya to make this, right?
No, we just built the individual rooms.
Okay.
Because we had 4 different animators working on it, so they just each took a room. So we didn't actually have a model of the space station. But, you know, if you were so inclined as to build one.
2 questions. Did you guys have a death screen when they died?
Yep.
And then also, can you give us an idea of how open-ended this is?
Talia, just want to remind you, could you repeat the question into the microphone?
Yeah. Okay, so the first question was there a death screen? And the parsley symbol is a skull. So yes, we when they died, which they did at least 3 times, we put the parsley symbol up with the words game over. Okay, and then they had to start over. And then what was the second question?
Oh, can you give us an idea of how open-ended this is? Like, I don't know, interesting.
The game itself, how open-ended the game is?
Yeah.
Not terribly. This particular game has a very specific list of tasks
Okay.
that need to be carried out. And having Jared as our game master was kind of nice because towards the end he started letting them fudge a little bit, and because he knew where everything was, he knew how to work around those fudges. So the game itself is I have a copy of the game if you want to take a look at it, but you can see it's very complex and there's a very long list of things that you are going to need to do to win. But they did win in the end. Anything else?
Yeah. So standing in that slide you had the observation room, there clearly is a door, but the list of things that someone might want to do there, the suggestions they might have, how do you narrow that down to the 3 things you can do in that room?
That's partially the game master's task. So the question is, you're in the observation room, there's not much you can do there. What do you do when somebody gives you a question or gives you a command that you can't carry out? And that's partially the game master's job to be like, you can't do that. But there are, it looks like there's just one door, but you can inspect. There's instructions in here for if they say, look at the warship or look at the planet. So it's surprisingly detailed for just sort of looks like just a brochure, a trifold brochure, but it's got a lot of information.
1 minute on questions.
Sorry?
1 minute on questions.
All right.
I have one quick thing. This is from Jared himself. He did make the website. He didn't put full dome though. It's planetarium at the end.
All right, so it's momentummori.com/planetarium.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you charge admission for this?
And this is what I was trying to remember. I think we charged no more. It was $10 or less. I was trying to remember what we charged. It was.
So is that like regular admission pricing or is it special event pricing or?
No, our special event pricing is usually $12. We charge. I'm not even sure that I was trying to remember this, and I don't think we even charged 10 for this because it was kind of an experiment. And I don't think we paid Jared, for instance.
Okay, Talia, and that's unfortunately going to have to wrap this up.
All right, if you have more questions, I'm around.
All right, how's everyone doing? Good morning. Maybe some of you last year remember I gave a talk on the Coffee Full Dome lecture series, and in particular, I reported on our first lecture, which was a lecture that we cast to a few sites of Mike Brown. And at the very end of it, I said that we are planning to make a full dome planetarium show. I did not lie. So.
Closer into the microphone, please.
Yeah, how's that? I'm gonna move this over here so it's more comfortable for me. All right, so this is the show. And we opened that show this Memorial Day, got really good reviews. Tribune said it was our best show ever. I'm going to give you a little bit from Mike, hopefully. Let's see if we can make this work. With the audio. Is our audio not working?
I don't see the video running or the audio.
Really?
Yeah.
On my screen. Why is it not on yours?
I couldn't get audio out the other night either.
Oh, it was working when we were testing. Let's see here. All right. That's a shit. We're gonna skip that and move on. We'll skip that. Anyway, basically, he was telling the story. So one of the things that happened between when we decided to make that show last year at GLPA and the release of the show was some pretty major science happened on the show we were already working on, and that was the concept of Planet 9. In fact, he was going to tell a little bit of that story about how we were actually privy to some of that information before the rest of the public. We got to start working with the data that was in the final press release in the paper months before the paper went out. This is just a little Twitter exchange, a side story, because when we initially presented to the Copley Foundation and to Mike the idea of a show, we decided to title that show Planet 9. That's the proposal I wrote. I picked Planet 9 because I said, well, we'll start out with Pluto, we'll knock that off as Planet 9, and there's this idea of maybe a potential planet out there. But our first meeting with Mike, he said, I love the show, we cannot call it Planet 9. It's a terrible name, people talking about Pluto. I'm like, all right, but then we went, the whole time we're like, the temporary name Planet 9, we're trying to figure out what are we going to call this show for months, and then they come out with a press release, and it's Planet 9. I'm like, what the hell? So I tweeted him immediately, and he's like, yeah, now we can call it Planet 9. But the show's really about much more than Planet 9. In particular, in between the lecture and the show, we passed by Pluto, so we wanted to talk about that. But we also really wanted to talk about that whole realm of the Kuiper Belt, this whole new era worlds that are being discovered out of the outer solar system, rich class of worlds, and some of the more interesting discoveries there. So these are some of the animatic storyboard scenes. One of the other key elements is that part of our brand is live presentation, but part of what made this interesting was Mike and his personality, and in particular his sense of humor. So how do we balance? We want to have him present in the show, but we also, we really wanted to have this be a live presented show. And the compromise is that what we did is we have live presenters introduce and close the show, and Mike's narration is in the middle when he's talking about the things that are most personal to him, the discovery of Eris, for instance. There's a style to the show, which is we're not necessarily trying to reproduce a look of things, but it's really a sort of data viz style. And in particular, one of the things we try to do is tell a story through the visuals, a complete story through the visuals, and a story that it's at a deeper and richer level than the story we tell with the words. So the words might be at a lower level, but the visuals are telling you a story that's interesting to a researcher in the field. In fact, it's interesting to the researchers in the field. They're seeing their data in a way they would never see it before. That's particularly important. To produce that, let's see. How do I make this play? Right? I'm not having much success, am I? All right, well, I apologize. My movie's not playing, but this is, we'll show you. Why don't we just cut this down and let's go to the full dome slides. So, but in particular with a lot of these slides, all right, here we go. So I'll just give you a, let's see. I'll give you the 7-minute version of the show. All right, so we can start stepping through those. So we begin with Pluto, and if you look at the style of the show, what we see are these frustrums coming by. What we actually initially wanted to use was the open space software, which is being developed out of AMNH, which does track spacecraft You see their camera frustrums, and it does projection mapping onto the bodies. It turns out they weren't quite ready to render from that software, so our animators simulated that. So you're seeing the camera frustrums, you're seeing it hit the planet as it goes by, and we're pulling up some of the beautiful Pluto images. Next slide. And the very last shot is showing that beautiful engineered eclipse of Pluto and its atmosphere, and that's borrowed as the logo. Let's go to the next one. For a good fraction of the show, what you're seeing here is part of an animation that takes us through the discovery of the Kuiper Belt. So, you know, the orbit of Pluto tells you that something weird is happening out there, and that likely its tilt indicates that there are other bodies out there interacting with Pluto. But nobody could find anything until 1992. After that discovery, the discoveries just kept pouring in really fast once people knew where to look. And we show that animation. This scene and a lot of the scenes were rendered out of the real-time system. We used UniView. And in particular, what's happening now is the power of graphics cards is getting to the point where we can dump a lot of data in them and do pretty sophisticated visualizations. But also, the opening up of programmable graphic shaders allows you to do lots of custom animations. So we can animate things through time. If you take us to the next slide, we'll show you what I mean by some of these custom animations. So as we go through time, we're discovering things, their orbits are lighting up. But we can also change how we show things. So now, instead of just showing them all equally, we're scaling them by their size. And I'm actually circling in circle ones that Mike Brown's team have found. So he found most of the large Kuiper Belt objects. Not that one, because it's Pluto. Next slide. The show was basically, so that real-time rendering was, I don't know, maybe 70% of the show. The remainder was a mix of animation like you saw and time-lapse photography. This is the 48-inch out at Palomar where Eris was discovered. We go to the next slide. And then we talk about Eris. And one of the interesting things there is that, you know, initially this looked to be, you know, to be a planet. And the reason it's not a planet is that it's incredibly reflective, 97%. But we talk about this just from the image where we can't see its size, and we just have its brightness. This thing could either be small and very bright, or it could be large and very dim, and we fly around it and try to figure that out. If we could go to the next slide. This was an interesting scene, and one that we actually struggled with. So if you've seen the show already, or if you saw it at IPS, we actually wound up redoing the scene. So we spent the last few months looking at the scene, and it was the one where we wanted to compare all the different objects. And there's sort of a famous infographic that we had been basing off. We were trying to find a nice way to do that. We finally settled on this after going through a number of iterations. So these are like toy objects on a table, allows us to compare their size. Overhead, what's in the process of building up as we fly around this and talk to it is a chart showing the relative diameters of the planets. All right, great. Let's go to the next slide. Haumea is a pretty interesting world that we spend a lot of time on. This egg-shaped object that's got more ice and rock. That leads us, if we go on to the next slide, to think that this object actually originated in a giant collision. I'm not going to show you that collision. You'll have to come to Chicago if you want to see it. But another piece of evidence has to do with these orbits. And I think I actually showed this animation last time where we start to show how these orbits, if you go again to the next slide, and we're going to go through these. Why don't you just take me through these like every 20 seconds so I don't run out of time. these orbits actually, over time, have precessed and went from a tight bundle, which we're sort of seeing animated here, to the spread out over time. And that was the effects of billions of years of orbit evolution. Keep going. Sedna, and we're following its 11,000-year orbit now, is the object that really leads us to start realizing that there are things far out in the solar system. Let's keep going. And you saw these orbits before. There are a bunch of more and more Sedna-like objects. At the time that we opened the show, there were 7 Sedna-like objects, and it's their orbits, all pointed in roughly the same direction, that led to the hypothesis of Planet 9. Initially, they thought it would be over there, but more detailed computer simulations indicate that actually it's anti-aligned. And that was the big thing. So here we're actually seeing that alignment, and the reason why it's special is that over time they would precess. In around 400 million years, they would be scrambled. We actually had I actually tried to calculate that initially, and I was off horribly. But we have scientists who come and present in our lab, and one of them saw the numbers I had and was like, no, that's wrong. So he did the calculations for us. So this is the computer simulation that over 4 billion years, the movie I tried to play, and I'll be happy to show you afterwards, that shows how these orbits evolve over time and how Planet 9 leads to a population of anti-aligned orbits. And then finally, this is showing the potential orbits of Planet 9. One of the interesting ideas was trying to show the idea of uncertainty. We don't talk a lot about scientific uncertainty in a planetarium, and it was a fun concept to play with. And I think I've just got 2 more, and you can take me right through. We accompanied Mike Brown out to Subaru telescope for the very first night of searching for the planet. He thought he had about a 5% chance of finding that night, and it took him a long time to reduce the data. So, and then it was actually an absolutely pristine night. So we had 0.4 arcseconds seeing that night. It was incredible. The volcano was active. You can see the glow from Kilauea right in front of you. Actually, it was a pretty amazing night. So spent the entire night, all night long, up at Subaru, beautiful night on Mauna Kea, drove down, went snorkeling in the coral reefs, and then in the evening went out to Kilauea and saw it erupting. So one of the cooler days of my life. All right, I think I've more than exhausted my time. So.
Yep, we're out of time, Mark, sorry.
Thank you guys very much, and be happy to talk to you more about this.
Hi. Okay, so talking about dome casting to VR casting. Last year I did a talk about VR and how it's going to impact our field, and we've done a few things since then at the Adler, and I think I just wanted to share some of that, and hopefully a little demo will work at the end. So as Mark said earlier, we've been doing this Copley lecture series at the Adler, and that's enabled us to test some of this new technology. So our first one was with Mike Brown, and we dome cast it out to a few sites. It went really well, and it allowed us to, go beyond our 200 seat limit. And all the effort that we put into the show we were able to share it with a lot more people. So there's a lot of advantages to dome casting. Our domes are kind of have an area of influence, and that's why I like this picture from that canceled TV series, because imagine that's your dome and that's its area of influence around your city or town. And so how do we get beyond that area of influence? We can reach an audience now with dome casting around the world. We can share resources with other planetarium. So if at the Adler we're putting a lot of manpower into creating a presentation. We can now share that with other planetarium. We have higher return on that time. We're getting more people to see our work and hear our lectures, and it's expandable. But there are challenges. Right now, domecasting is software dependent, meaning that if we have a UniView system, we need to domecast to a UniView system. If you have an ENS system, you need to domecast to an ENS system. There's scheduling conflicts. The further you reach out around the world. The interaction with the speaker from all sites. Something great about going to the planetarium is being able to go up and meet the person after the show. And right now we're having to do that virtually. Stable internet connection, that's always going to be an issue, at least in the foreseeable future. And dome configuration, so all domes are a little different. So how do you ensure the audiences get the experience you want them to? So we had a lot of success with that first one, so we did a second Cobley lecture. And see here, this is the advertisement for Peoria showing off the show. It was with Michael Turner, and that one went really well. And now we're going to be domecasting a third lecture Friday. So, this one is with Nurjis Mavavala, and she is doing gravity waves. But we wanted to try to reach more people with this one. So that's where VR castings come in. So we are going to VR cast this lecture. And so dome to VR casting, yeah, I searched VR casting, that's the picture that came up. So expanding the audience even more. So now we've been dome casting to maybe 1,000 people. Now we can go to tens of thousands. The possibility's endless. It creates a content urgency. Experiencing a live presentation, watching the game live with your friends is much better than watching it on DVR. New revenue possibilities. You can monetize streaming. You can charge a small fee for people to log on and experience your event live. And content is not vendor or software dependent anymore. Meaning UniView system can domecast to a ENS system, or a Skyscan system can send out a stream and an ENS system can pick it up. And so this is going to allow us true collaboration. I always find it interesting going to a conference and sometimes you see like all the ENS people are sitting together and all the Skyscan people are sitting together, and hopefully this will break down those walls. There are technical advantages. I won't go over too many of these because I want to try to show something off that may or may not work. So we have full sphere versus half sphere. VR casting allows us to send out the full sphere stream to people. Correct projection, 3D stereoscopic viewing, instantaneous and independent viewing for each individual, and you have an emitting display instead of projection, so your phone, for example. And I left something at my seat, so hold on. So for outreach for the next one, we've taken and sent out Google Cardboards, and we've branded them with stickers to save on cost. And inside, we have 2 cardboards and a flyer. And it tells us here, join the next Cobley lecture, and it gives you a site to go to. And then you have 2 headsets here with branding on it. And we've sent these out to everyone from VIPs to potential donors, to students, and also we've sent some to Kenya, which hopefully get out of customs soon. But we're hoping that this is going to allow us to reach a lot more people and share these experiences. So right now, if you go to YouTube and you search Adler SVL GLPA 2016, we are streaming live from the Adler right now. on your phone. So you can see here that I have a live view of our planetarium software. And I might, if somebody was speaking there, we could be watching it here right now. And this is interactive, so you can look around like you're in the dome. You can hear the audio. You could ask questions. You can participate in Q&A. And you can socialize with other people watching with you. So pretty cool. So every 10 years, a new platform, computing platform emerges, and we are on the cycle of the VR platform. And it's only going to become more and more mainstream. And if we can start to do these type of events where we're bringing our content, our planetarium content out to VR, we're going to be secured for the next 10 years. Now, since there's only 4 of you here, everybody gets one of these. I have 4, but if you want one, raise your hand. Go ahead, ask your questions.
Yes, you said you could moderate questions. How do you handle the questions as they come into
YouTube has this is through YouTube streaming right now, and YouTube has a moderation channel attached to it. So once you set up your stream, you have a virtual control room, just like you were at the Channel 7 News, and you can see when people ask questions because they'll put like hashtag question, and then the question will be after it. You can start to log those. So you'll need somebody to be the moderator for your chat room.
So the moderator then sends the questions to the
Yeah, exactly, to the lecturer. And for domecasting, we did that through Skype.
Just a reminder, can I get you to repeat the question? That way it's picked up on the
Oh
recording.
yeah, the question was how do you moderate questions?
Whoever catches it.
For those of us who are optic mechanical only, would that work if we used a media projector would it work to stream on our dome without?
A media projector, is it the media projector run off a computer?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so here's the site. So if you want to join us, go to Copley Live at theplanetarium.org, Copley Live. Again, I'll leave the stream up if you're just curious and you want to try it on a Google Cardboard. You can go to search for Adler SVL. It'll run until I tell it to stop. So I'll just leave it up.
Patrick?
Yeah.
The light is in your eyes, so you can't see there's more than 4 people here. How does everybody else participate in a box, get a package?
We're not sending this out to the public yet. That's why I said this was for VIPs right now. But I think in the future, we're going to look at expanding this. It's very simple branding. We did stickers to save cost. But I've seen NSC do like amazing themed Google Cardboards. But Amazon has cardboard for maybe $2.50 if you don't want to build your own, $3. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you have set up for the Adler right now?
Oh, this is running off my desktop right now at the Adler. Actually, if I just scale out. So I'm in TeamViewer right now at my desktop, and this is UniView's window running right here in full rectangular. And then if I go here, this is called OBS, Open Broadcast Software. And this is pretty much the gold standard for broadcasting right now to stream. So if you watch anyone streaming from their home on Twitch or playing video games or anything, they're probably using OBS. And so this sends this channel video feed to my YouTube channel, so YouTube Live. And YouTube Live will accept a 360 stream. And so we're just broadcasting the full Echo Rectangular, and then YouTube takes care of converting it in real time over to Google Cardboard. Which I assume this is working for Facebook too, because they take the same stream. We have not broadcast to Facebook yet. Any other questions? Yeah?
Is the 360 cylindrical available in UV now, or did you set something custom now?
It's custom right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what we need to do, is let our vendors know that we want this type of configuration. So Echo Rectangular is pretty much the standard for doing VR right now.
And is this true stereo, or would it look just like I'm looking at it?
Oh, it's not stereo, yes. YouTube doesn't support stereo 360 live, but I assume it's going to be pretty quick, and they do. Any other questions? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Do you archive your VRcast or whatever?
Yeah, so there's an option to automatically save and archive your lectures now, which is great because you don't have to get out the camera and try to record your session, and then light levels and things. So whatever your audience experiences will be saved and archived for later. Right now you can do up to 2K resolution for streaming. If you go up to the maximum resolution, you're limited to a 3-hour stream for archive.
Okay, and with that, I unfortunately have to announce that we are out of time. I want to thank once again our presenters for coming out and presenting their papers. Also, just a quick reminder, the business meeting is going to be taking place over at the Bauer Theater, so feel free to join them over there as well.